Cool, so it's been quite a while since I've done a build video. There's loads been going on. Obviously I've started all my printing stuff in after the idea of doing airsoft and airsoft replacement parts with my Airsoft Ingenuity brand, and the business has kind of grown now, and I've ended up with a full 3D printing business. I'll put a link in the description, but if you can remember it verbally, it's www.3d-horizons.co.uk, and I've got loads of Sapphire Pros, which have all been converted to Duet Wi-Fi's and are just great. A few other bits and pieces, quite a few resin printers, and I've actually got a Modix big meter as well. So that's a meter by a meter by a meter cube printer for, you know, enormous parts, prototyping of engineering parts, engine block components, vehicle parts, motorcycle parts, all sorts of things. Anyway, today I couldn't resist a bargain, so on I think it's either Banggood or Alibaba, one of the two. I thought I would get the Sp-5, which is the slightly larger. So it's 2 trees, Sapphire Pro 5, I guess, or Sp-5. So it's the larger model, which for the bed has two guide rails on the Z-axis down the side. So rather than just one at the back and the platform cantilevering down as it goes. So I just thought I'd do a quick sort of build video on this. Really, I'm going to convert this to Duet Wi-Fi as well. So we'll build the various bits and get it set up. It's going to have my custom print head element put in there, and it's going to need, when it's converted, a BL Touch clone bed probe put on there as well. So we'll get it unboxed and we'll start the build process and see what's what. So here's the top of the printer. Seems to have gone up a bit in quality. Well, not quality, in terms of how much is built before you get it. So nice that the motors are marked. I'll trust that those stickers are on correctly for now. Odd time they haven't been. And what's nice as well is it actually comes with all the belts installed and assembled. Tension seems reasonable. I might put some tension springs on there in the end. Whereas on the smaller Sapphire Pros, you've got to route all the belts and cable tie them to here in the first place, which can be confusing if you've never done a Core XY before, but once you've done it a couple of times, it's pretty straightforward. One thing that's worth checking as well is, and I've actually had it happen to one of my printers after a fair bit of use, is some of these bolts securing the rails to the frame are a bit loose, so it's worth checking them all before you start fully assembling a printer. I mean, you could go belt and braces and just put a bit of thread lock on them as well, but yeah, that's not really needed. It's more the fact that we're finger tight at best, some of them, and the rail actually started to come away from the main frame, so I'm going to check that. You get quite a nice bed, actually quite big, fairly well managed cable on there with a large XT connector on, fairly chunky wire to it as well actually, so that's good. Must provide a fair chunk of current to it. And here's obviously the bed, which perhaps feels or sounds a bit like a glass bed actually. I think, yeah, it is borosilicate glass. I've actually bought a magnetic bed to put on the top of this, so I may or may not apply that. And then interestingly, they give you, this is a thermal sticky pad for the bed to try and, you know, help retain the heat, to keep the bed at temperature, use less electricity, make it heat up faster. Cool. but this is the same size as the Sapphire Pro. Why is it not, you know, the full size of the bed with a little cutout on it? Anyway, I'm sure I can fashion something up to sort that out. Maybe use something else. So yeah, it looks pretty good so far. So there's the two linear rails for the Z-axis. There's all the various extrusions, the two lead screws and the two couplers. Now, one interesting thing about, let's have a look at these. Yeah, so these, I don't know if I can get it to focus, let's try. There we go. So these lead screws, they're really flat in terms of the thread angle. So it'd be like 45 degrees like most, it's really shallow. So they do tend to make a lot more noise and squeal a bit. And they're not compatible with normal, normal brass bushes, brass threaded things that go on. I just can't think of the name. They're just not compatible. These are okay, but yeah, if you want to change them for anything else, then you're going to have to change all the components, that the threaded, whatever those brass things are that I can't remember right now. They're not the bushes, but the threaded things. So they are a slightly different pitch. We've got all these bits in here, so I'm going to take all that lot out and start to assemble, I think. Okay, so all the frame bits are out. Now the next bit. So actually, it comes much more assembled actually than the smaller Sapphire Pro printers. So all the wiring is all routed. Normally you have to route all of this, you have to assemble this, you've got to put the cable wrap round everything, whereas it's actually all assembled. But these hot ends, this will be being replaced immediately with one that I'll show you, actually, one from a design of mine that allows you to use an E3D hot end. The reason being is these do tend to suffer from heat creep, and after a while you can get problems with the fans aren't generally powerful enough. Having said that, maybe they've upgraded them since the earlier models, I don't know, but both the cooling fans for the part cooling and the heat block cooling fans just don't flow enough. And this thing, especially if you're running at sort of higher temperatures, even with PLA, if you're running long prints, it can start to get too much heat soak in here, and then it just start to cause problems, and it strips the filament at the extruder, and you cause jams, and they are a pain in the arse to take apart once they're installed on the printer, and undo all this and clean all the jam, make everything flow freely again. They're just a pain. So I replace all this with an E3D. It's a plastic casing that slips in an E3D hot end and puts cut out the front to be bigger. You put a bigger 40mm axial fan on there, and it's fine. So I'm gonna have to do that. But other than that, the heater cartridges in there, the thermistors, everything's in there really. It's pretty much assembled. And what else have we got down here? Well, this is the end of the bed. Cables are all marked up. Now in general they're marked up the right way, but I have had one of these, one of the Sapphire Pros, and the cables are actually marked up wrong. So when I'd started rewiring it all for a Duet Wi-Fi board and connected the cables up, I think the Y-axis was the X-axis and the X was the Y. So that got some interesting behaviour for a while until I realised that. But hopefully these are all marked up nicely. So it looks pretty nicely made, to be fair. Right, let's get on and assemble some of it. Okay, so that's with this disassembled. What we we need to do next, this has been taken apart. You can see that the design of this is a large 4mm bore all the way down, so that's with the PTFE tube going straight through into effectively into the heater block area. So you wouldn't normally want to be using this at too high a temperature with the PTFE, so not ideal for ABS or that kind of material, but reasonable I guess for PLA, PETG. So I replace this with a bimetal heat break, an E3D V6 circular heat sink. Modify this so you can get a 40mm fan and a 3D print a custom housing to allow you to push it all inside here. Yeah, so more on that later. And you do, I think possibly, I'll have to check. I'm going to keep these original fans on for the moment with the fan guides and everything. I think I'm going to test them, but normally I replace them with more powerful versions of the same thing. But there were issues, I think, last time with the putting effectively the 3D printed assembly to hold the E3D nozzle in here. I ended up having to machine and cut these metal elements off. And with the depth of it as well, I think these guides aren't, I think the nozzle ends up being about where my thumb is, and these guides aren't in the right place, so I might have to play around with this bit. But yeah, let's get going and putting it together. Okay, so the first bit of the installation is simple. Just put the rubber feet in, which are these rubber feet. Go on each corner with a bolt that goes through like that. I think they're 2.5mm. Just screw these on. Gives it a little bit of stability. Okay, so now we're going to install the Z-axis guide rails. And you can see here this wire is the Z-axis limit. It should be marked up with Z, yep. But I'm not going to be using this because I'm going to use the BL Touch and replacing the whole motherboard on this machine, so that can go in here and out of the way for now. Make sure it's well out of the way of the two bolt holes at the bottom, and we'll put the guide rails in. Okay, so we've got the rail. There we go. We'll put it on the printer now. You can see it's got these plastic end stops in here and here. They need to be removed, but not just yet. And they're just basically to stop the linear bearing coming straight off the end of the rail. Okay, so this goes in here. Obviously the rail facing the inside. If you were sticking with the same motherboard, you'd have to make sure you route the cable up there and not trap it for the Z-axis limit, but I'm not. And then it's two M5 bolts through there to secure it. So bit next is to install these top pieces, and you can see the mark left and the other one's right, obviously, and they only go one way over, which is this way, which has got the cutouts for the M5 bolts. So it's going to sit on top of there. Let's get the M5 bolts and we can secure it. So there we go, so these M5 by 40 bolts, or M5 by 30 I think, and I'm just going to do them, just nip them up. In fact, might just leave them slightly loose just in case while we're squaring everything up. So that's that side, put the other side on, and then we'll get to the four corners.